Welcome to today's battle report, and today's battle report is going to be Lizardmen versus Goblins. The figures are 10mm scale and they're all more or less from Pendraken. I think some of the lizards are from Irregular Miniatures. All the scenery is scratch built, and the rule system we are using is Hail Caesar with a few slight modifications for gaming with 10mm. So I should mention before we start that the Lizardman army is based on the Neo-Babylonian army from the Hail Caesar army lists, and the Goblin army is based on the Gaul army, the Gallic army, with a few exceptions. So we will begin and we will see how it plays out. The Goblins are holding the castle at the far end of the battlefield, and they also have a wizard's tower to defend as well. The Lizardman army is invading, and therefore they're technically attacking, and they're trying to capture both positions. If one position is taken, then it's a draw. If both are taken, then it's a victory for the Lizardmen. So let's begin. That's the end of the first round, and it's gone very interesting for both sides because both sides blundered on their order dice and have ended up actually rolling attack orders, which has been quite interesting. In the woodland, the Goblins have been pushed back by the rather evil, nasty Triceratops, manned by Lizardmen. I've lost 2 regiments there, which wasn't very good for me. I've tried a little battle up here, but unfortunately my Warg Riders haven't been able to break through the enemy ranks. So that's not going too well. And the troops here have been pushed all the way back to the actual entrance to the tower, so that's not going well either. It's not looking good on this side. Over here, however, I have successfully managed to be pushed all the way back to the fortress. All my troops have basically routed back and occupied the fort, which is a pretty good defensive position. So that should turn out okay in the long run. The enemy troops are crossing the river. However, I do have these rather nice shiny trolls on the side of the army, the flank of the army. So that could turn out quite well if he advances any further, but it entirely depends on what goes on there. His artillery is intact and has been able to do nothing for the entire battle, and I don't really think it's made any difference. So that is the overall end of the first round, and we're going to see what happens next. It's proved quite bad for the Lizardman army. The trolls have come over the side onto their flank. They've routed the little tiny frogs, and they've basically pushed back the elephants and really put a huge dent in the flank of the Lizardman army. The flyer, however, is holding its own, so that's kind of prevented any follow-up, but overall it's not looking very good on this side of the battlefield. In the centre, however, it's getting even worse. The entire Goblin line has been pushed back, and they're now all fallen back and are now currently fording the river, and it looks like they're moving back to the safety of the castle. The Lizardmen have yet to follow up. They simply haven't had the dice to move. If they had had the dice to move, then it could have been a round, and it would have been a very quick game. But it also looks like the Goblins have managed to lose control of the tower, as in there's no troops in it anymore. They've come out and are now withdrawing. So, well, it's not looking too good for my army. It looks like the Lizardmen are doing better on this side than they are that side, but overall it's pretty much a draw. It's looking even worse for the Goblins now. The Lizardman army has made a concerted effort to advance rapidly and have basically smashed into the front line of the Goblins just as they're withdrawing. So it really does not look good for the Goblins now. The Triceratops with little Lizardmen on the back has hit the flank of my cavalry and the Lizardmen cavalry are coming in the front, and over here we have a large Lizardman contingent hitting the already disordered Goblin cavalry. So it's not at all looking good, and I don't think I'm going to hold out. Well, that's the end of the turn, and as I suspected, the Goblins have been well and truly trounced. However, they have managed to actually hold. So just over on the flank I've held, and in the centre the Goblins have held as well. The Goblins, however, have taken quite a few hefty casualties, and it looks like I'm slowly being cut off from the fortress, so the Goblins aren't going to be able to make it that way. So it doesn't look too good for the Goblins at all. On the far side, as all this is going on, the Trolls have been truly trounced. The 2 regiments of Trolls have been destroyed. However, 1 regiment of Lizardmen have been destroyed, the Lizardmen bowmen, who really didn't stand a chance against the Trolls anyway. However, the Elephants appear to be the best antidote to Trolls. The Elephants have well and truly smashed into the Trolls and destroyed them, even though they're in a river. So that's the state of play. There are still forces cowering inside the ruined fortress, because they're basically goblin cowards, and they're letting their friends do all the fighting while they just hide inside the fort. It's awful, really. It's typical goblin behaviour. The Lizardmen, however, are still fully formed, well-trained fighting units, smashing in there, destroying goblins left, right and centre. His Triceratops has had quite a few casualties. It's actually close to breaking itself, so if it carries on trying to go through the woods, there's a good chance it might get killed. The Lizardmen in the river are doing perfectly fine. However, the troops they're fighting against are already disordered, and I don't think they're going to hold. So that's the end of the turn. Let's see what happens next. The Triceratops has effectively pushed the Goblins a little bit further back, although the Goblins are still holding somehow. They just rolled a really good morale roll. And the Goblins are holding, but then again they do have their general with them, which is probably helping. Unfortunately, at the river, the Lizardmen are coming across in huge amounts of force, and the only guys holding them is 1 small regiment of Wolf Riders, who I don't think are going to hold because they've already got 6 hits. So I don't think they're actually going to hold now, which is going to leave the last Goblin unit on the right bank of the river well and truly up the river without a paddle. So I don't really think it's going to be good for them. And the Goblins in the fortress are still hiding in the fortress. They've refused to come out and refused to take any part in the battle, or indeed get themselves involved in any of that heavy lifting business with weapons and stuff. So it's not going well. And this is the end of the turn, and the battle is well and truly over. The Goblin general is finally dead, trampled to death by the Triceratops and probably eaten, although I think the Triceratops was a vegetarian, so I'm not really sure if he likes goblins. But goblins are green, so, you know, probably got chlorophyll in or something. Over here we have basically the entire Lizardman army swarming through the forest. The defenders of the river are now dead, and on the far side the last unit of Trolls has been killed by the huge woolly mammoth elephant things. So it's not really gone well at all for the Goblins. However, the Goblins hiding in the castle are still hiding in the castle. They don't have a general. With the general being dead, we'd have to roll the general up, and besides we kind of figure there's not really much point carrying on the battle. We'd say that technically it's actually a draw, given that the Lizardmen have captured the watchtower, or the wizard's tower, and so that's happily in the Lizardman's hands. However, they're going to have quite an effort trying to capture the big castle, even though the Goblins inside are pretty desperate. So we'll basically call it a draw just for today, and that ends the game, the first battle report with our 10mm fantasy. Hopefully there'll be quite a few more, and I would like to show off all my really cool scenery that I've got for 10mm, such as the Wizard's Tower and the castle, and of course my awesome Goblin army. Unlike the Lizardman army, which is rubbish and no one likes it because it's...
Even though I won.
Yeah, well, you may have won.
And this time they're mine.
Yeah, I know. Right, so there ends the battle report. So as we go now, it's Lizards 1, Goblins 0. And we'll see how the next battle goes. This has been me. If you enjoyed the battle report, then please click like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, I hope you enjoy the next one. And it's been from him as well. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah, okay, now we're leaving. See ya.